It's the time of the season when love runs high. In this time.
Oh, babies, it's a good life, and it's good to have some time to tell you the truth. Off of the road, I done my 3 million miles, and I've seen a lot. In that 3 million miles of time, I mean, I've been seasoned like a veteran from hell, man. You betcha. And brought back to life again and again and again and again in stages and steps all throughout my life, you know. They killed me off early on when I was just a child, man. You know, they take your, try to rob you of your essence, some folks do, you know, in certain circumstances. And I must have been one of those circumstances, because I sure caught it back then. But you know what? I could never put myself away. I mean, I, you know, allowed the modification of my person greatly. I did as a child. Oh, it hurt. Still does sometimes. Oh, I wish I could cry about it sometimes, really, you know. I know I did for years, man. But now I understand this thing in a different way, you know. And, babies, you know, I honor and respect all of my experience, the hardness of my childhood, and everything else to go with it, because I sure had a great time with it, despite all the avenues of pain that were heaped my way. Now, babies, I know you probably haven't read about it, but you probably should ought to read a little bit of that story, because it's got some seasoning in it that comes from the ancestors, too. Yeah, and it's kind of like my story, but it's all of us' story, you know. It's kind of like everybody's story. And it's in this book called The Atomic Bum, B-U-M, like your backside, the thing you're sitting on right now, at least you should be. Man, it's available on Amazon.com, and you can order it from bookstores everywhere, and, you know, some of them even have it on the shelf every now and then. It's scary, I know, but it's around. But the best way to get it, of course, you know, salute to you with my official Coyote Club mug, by the way. Best way to get it, babies, here on this, let's open up on this Monday, baby, Monday ain't so mundane no more, is it, baby, since you got the old Coyote here helping you even the score. Oh, baby, you know, and here's some more. I'm going to talk to you right now, babies, but don't forget the pitch I was on, man, you know, think about the Atomic Bum. Get your autographed copy over at the CoyoteClub.com. Coyotes with a K and clubs with a K, because when you're talking about Grandpa Coyote, you're talking about a K, because K is the way. It's purity, wouldn't you say? Yeah, I would too. So here's a good morning talk to you, babies, right here from the Rocky Mountain High, 9,000 feet high, babies, and getting higher all the time, man. Now, a lot of people live in confusion and pain about the avenues and aspects of Mary Jane. You know, it's been illegal for so long, and there's been so much brainwashing going on that even the people that use it, you know, quite often because you live in a state where it's really frowned on, feel kind of guilty or something like that, you know, because you feel like you're getting away with something. When in reality, you know, used properly now. We'll preface it with that. I'm not talking about you loadies who just want to be stoned all the damn time and you know, just think good thoughts but not live a good life. Screw that, man, you know. Both goes hand in hand. If it isn't fun, then, you know, it ain't worthy of doing, man. You know what I mean, Jelly Bean? So you can't just let it make you couch veg. And if it does, well, embrace the vegging and just do it until you're through with it, you know. I mean, don't push yourself into or out of anything. Let your heart take you along, carry you along. See, there's a real difference here between living a real life and a life that's completely programmed on the other hand, you see. People think that mind conditioning and thought control and shit like that is kind of new technology, and that, you know, super secret assholes like, well, we won't give them those 3-letter agencies. You know what I'm talking about, man. You know, those super secret assholes trying to control the heart and mind and soul of everybody on this earth, baby. Which, of course, cannot be done, but they fooled themselves into thinking they can. And they're attempting to do so right now, right on you, right this minute, man. There's some satellite beaming down on you saying, submit, and be kind, be cruel, whatever it is it's telling you to do in this moment. You got to be careful, man. Now, you think I'm nuttier than a damn fruitcake. You think I'm walking on the edge of life and I'm crazier than hell, don't you, when I talk like that? But, darlings, this stuff's been going on since the beginning of time. There was a movement not too long after we began time that kind of derailed humanity into this current state we happen to be in. We're coming right out of. But see, we had in a long, long time back before time began and before humanity is, well, there is something else, and it's love in motion, which of course is what all life arises from. And becomes so, because we're all made out of that love, which is light, of course, purity, truth. I mean, even the darkness is made out of light. Think about it. I mean, come on. If you don't know what light is, you don't know what darkness is. You see what I mean? Do you know what I mean? You can't have one without the other. They don't exist. And, we've looked at darkness as kind of like our enemy for a long time, and it's kind of looked at us in the same way. And that's because we split into polarities. Long before there was humanity, we split into polarities because we wanted to experience a wide range of emotional feelings, and that was the only way we could think about doing it. Though we didn't even have a clue what emotion was in those days, man. Let me tell you, man, in those moments, let's call them, because there were no days. There's only the moment, and just keeps growing from that moment. So I'm describing a thing that's outside of time a bit. Yet it's lived in time as well as outside of it. It's the same thing. It's the moment it is already, but it's constantly growing, and it just goes from there because it's been going on forever. You see, we tend to look at things in kind of a linear way. So we experience things in time, so there can be expansion and growth in time, of course. Because you can watch some, put yeast in some water with a little sugar in it, watch it raise up and get all foamy and get ready to make some bread for you if you know what you're doing here, right? Well, it's kind of like that in life. We just watch this love compel us into motion and sweep us along with its feelings because we're just rising up like that bubbly little bit of yeast, We needed some vastness in our experience so we could appreciate that bubbly feeling, We didn't know what it was. We lived in it all the time. We are the fountain of youth, the fountain of joy, the fountain of love, the fountain of fountains, and the fountain of that fountain, too. We just let it flow through us, babies, whether you know it or not. Now, it's highly modified in the way we've been living it, of course. And we've developed a planetary-wide fear of individual persons outside of ourselves. Yeah. I mean, come on now, aren't you scared of Obama? And doesn't he look like the Fuhrer and stuff like that? I mean, doesn't he feel like King Nebuchadnezzar reincarnated, the most unreasonable dude that ever lived before Nero? Got to know your history, folks. Got to keep up with Grandpa. Well, the mystery of the lion history, but the real history too, man. You got to remember that. It comes pouring through your heart as you start to remember, as old Grandpa and friends gab with you about what might be happening here, what might be going on inside of you right now, and all the rest of us too. Wouldn't you say? I would say so, babies. We got this way about us. This way of being that can endure anything and come out of it smelling like a rose. So no matter what you're going through right now in this life, and it might be gritty and gnarly for some of us, for others it's a piece of cake, and I love you for it. But babies, maybe you're going through the gnarly stuff right now, and flow with it, babies. Embrace yourself. Pull yourself out of that crap now. You don't have to wallow in it to know that it's been good to you and that it's brought you forward, but you sure as hell don't need it anymore. It's like a suit of clothes you've outgrown. It don't fit you anymore, and it never will, not ever again. The old paradigm and its ways. The ways of the god of money. The heartless ways. The ways of the god of the reptile. The heartless way. The ways of the god of coldness, the heartless ways. Well, how would we know there was cold without the warm? How would we know you could have too much of either one without experiencing extremes of both? I mean, shucks, guys. Without seasoning, there is no life. Without liberation, well, there's always going to be slavery, I mean, we're just numbed down little dummies. Without the experience of life to help us appreciate the love from which we create the life we've been living in, man. Now, I know there's a lot of talk about that shit out there. You can consciously create your life and blah, 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 blah. Whatever is going on in your life, it's your fault because you created it, man. Well, see, if you're going to take it to that level, baby, you're lost. And you're going to stay there. You're always going to be afraid of shit because it's always, I'm afraid it's my fault. But see, you have to move beyond such conceptions. And how can you move beyond them if you don't understand what the hell's going on here, you see? There's levels and stages and dimensions to it, yes. But if you can just move up a couple of tiny levels from where you've been, you'll start to understand this life and why you've been where you've been and why you're going where you're going and what you're doing right now. You see, you'll start to come open. You'll start to understand. And this is liberation from all thought control, from all mind control, from any control except the very control of creation through the love of the heart which creates. That's it. See, this is why we can be programmable, because we were designed to be programmed by the heart. It is our programmer. And when I'm talking about the heart, I'm not talking about your fickle little romantic heart or what you perceive of as a heart. See how we give good things a bad name in this reality? You give the heart a bad name. How the hell can you do that? But we did, Oh, my heart is so weak. I just always fall for the wrong person. I mean, I've used that one a lot too, man. Shit. Sometimes it seems like that, doesn't it? But you notice now, as you begin to become far more understanding of your life, that there's always whys and wherefores going on in the background, no matter what the hell you're living through. There's always a reason why you're there, and the side of you that's called soul is overjoyed to be doing it, no matter what it is. If it's living through the torture of a Nazi death camp, it's enjoying the shit out of it. Now, that's an extreme example, and I know that's pretty sick in its expression. But see, babies, how much judgment we carry. You see, I mean, maybe, yeah, it isn't about the most heartless and cruel thing you can think of, but look what we did to the Indians over here on the American side. Who the hell are we to be looking down our noses at anyone? Especially here in Colorado, man. We got a pretty rotten history with the natives here. It's kind of strange that this place would be so full of light and wonder as to be one of the first states to legalize pot. So we don't have to hide under the shadows and clouds anymore of conditioning and thought control, babies, you see. You've been taught that pot is something, and you'll experience it that way because that's what you've been taught to expect. It gets you stoned, man. And don't you pay no attention to those deep and ethereal thoughts you start to have. Just get more stoned, Doesn't work that way, never really did. But it let you get stoned, but you still couldn't shut off the thinking. And you kept getting more expansive, and you kept seeing sides and aspects of this wonderful universe that you'd never seen before, despite your catatonic vegetarianism there on the sofa couch of love. You're the ultimate vegetable. Maybe we should eat you, man. You see what I mean, Jelly Bean? Even in vegetation, there is a life living, and it's coming around because Mary J is there to help you along the way. No matter what others say, no matter how addictive you may think it is, and it ain't. Shit, I walked away from it a number of times in my life. I walk right back to it when I'm ready for it. You see, it's one of those things you do voluntarily. Well, most stuff is really. Addiction is part of your personality. It's not the substance you're addicted to, if you are addicted to a substance. It's part of your personality. You've got something going on there that says, I must have a routine. I must have a routine. I must have a routine. I must be escaping. I must be getting out of this painful place. Baby, one of the hardest things we got to do here is embrace our pain. Whatever's left of it, we've dealt with a lot of it, ain't we? And if they're still paying their... Oh, God, that's good coffee. Good morning to you, babies. Welcome back. Don't forget the Atomic Bomb on thecoyoteclub.com. Personally autographed copies, just $20. Postage paid, man. Get with the program. I'm doing a little fundraiser here because I got to, pay for my broadcasting abilities these days, and then we're going in a more commercial way, but in the meantime, I got to adjust from a listener base to a commercial base, which is still listener supported, because that'll be where my commercial comes from, you see. But anywho, we're in that state of transition, and so my expenses exceed my income, as they usually do, so let's just grab yourselves a copy of the Atomic Bum at this special price, just $20. Signed copies, postage paid. That's for a 6x9 glossy trade back, baby. I mean, it's a beautiful piece of work if ever there was one. Signed personally by the author, of course, who's also the High Pope of Pot these days. The very advocate of Mary J. all the way. If you don't believe me, go look at my Facebook page. There it is, Pope Coyote, Pope of Pot. Coyotes with a K. It's over there, man, and I do advocate for her highly. But notice, I had to do so secretly or in the background before legalization. But ever since it got legal, well, babies, you see? You see what I mean? We stepped beyond the condition a long time ago in the places where I've lived. Pot's been an accepted thing forever, and it might as well just have been legalized in most of the places I've lived, except Utah, where they probably still think it's a wicked thing, man. They're so goddamn backwards there. Talk about your thought control. Oh, jeez, that's a good example of it, but it's kind of grown a bit, so I don't know what it's like nowadays. I ain't hung around over there in so long, forgot what it felt like. But the last time I did, it was still like stepping back into a Nazi empire again. I mean, I tell you, babies, it's so restricted there. I'm glad to see them doing different things, though, like building little tiny houses for the homeless and stuff. Utah's obviously starting to make some progress, and God, I'm proud of you, because you guys sure been backwards for a long frickin' time, man, They were Nazis when before World War I, man. I mean, they've been backwards forever. When I say Nazis, I'm not saying the Empire of the Third Reich or anything like that. I'm just saying in the attitude that they carried in their lives. It was pretty regimented. It was pretty militaristic and totally authoritarian based, you see. And when you get around to it, this authoritarian shit is so worn out. And was then too, man. I mean, goodness gracious. When I think about this authoritarian male god that everybody's supposedly been worshiping and talking to and walking with forever and ever, and God takes care of me and all that shit. Yeah, right. Man, I mean, when I think about that dude, if he's going to be a separate dude, which I don't think he is at all. I mean, I live it differently. But let's just say, See, we're getting into the mind conditioning aspects of it. They start right there. With that male god that's a demanding SOB and wants you to go kill off that nation and take the virgins but kill everybody else. And that nation killed all the virgins too, but don't you dare. Oh, you violated my conditions, now I'm going to have to annihilate you. And, I mean, what kind of god is that? You remember hearing those stories when you were a kid going, oh my God, that sounds worse than President Nixon, man. Just to name a few names, you see. It's like, wow. See, so Nazi is the attitude, If you're into fascism, if you're into, authoritarianism, you're a frickin' Nazi, man. You might as well call yourself that and go goose step with the rest of them. You know what I mean, Jelly Bean? Because you got the Nazi attitude, and you are goose stepping, though they don't call it the goose step now. You don't walk it the same way. But walk it you do. It's common thought, common feeling. Boy, I was exposed heavily to that in that Utah environment when I was a kid. I mean, there was a pressure to conform there like, I don't know. You won't find anywhere else. And they had all these ways through mind conditioning and programming, which I began to recognize as a child. I couldn't call it that, but I knew it wasn't right. It didn't feel right. I knew they were trying to knock the props out from under me and get me to surrender to this authoritarian god of theirs, and I thought he was a dickhead. I didn't want nothing to do with this sumbitch. Those stories were chilling, and I looked around me in this world, and all I saw was coldness, heartlessness, you know, these people that were such divine saints on Sunday in church and talking about how great they are and how much they love everybody. Monday morning they love everybody else's bank account. They're after it too, man, or whatever else they have. You know, they'll take the farm from grandma. They don't give a shit. You know, I mean, it was a business world. And while some were honest enough, thank goodness there was a few. Like my daddy, he was fairly straight about it. But there some were honest enough to, like, you know, try to do a good thing through the business world and not try to rip everybody off. But 90% or more of the population that, you know, populated the area I was raised in, where there was such a dogmatic thing imposed upon you as you're going to obey this big God, and there's a big God in Salt Lake City too, baby. You know, and pretty soon that's going to be you if you know, mind your P's and Q's. And I'm looking at him going, eh. I mean, I love my parents, I love my family, I love my friends, I love my little community that I come from, the mountains there, oh God, they're awesome. The land there, auspicious as all get up. But there's some real craziness going on there. And there has been since the beginning of the European invasion there back in the mid-1800s, man. I'm telling you. This place is nuttier than a fruitcake. And you talk about, they have tried and tested many different forms of mind control and conditioning on that isolated population out there. Before Utah started to grow in the 2000s, before it got the boom, when it was still a relatively small population of 500,000 or so, spread across, you know, a couple of 100 miles of the Wasatch Range there, you know, right against those old eastern mountains, like we are here in Crestonia, beautiful country, man. But oh my God, see, your founding fathers sold you out. You know, way back in the day when they were getting their asses kicked for having too many wives. But the real issue wasn't about wives at all, to be honest with you. It was about who owns the territory out there in Utah and environs. Because by then, old BYU, as I call him, had spread his influence far and wide, man. You know, they were like a circle for anywhere at least 500 miles wide around Salt Lake City, that this guy had established residences and communities and stuff. He was an empire builder, you know, and he brought the saints out there, as they called themselves in that time, to begin a whole new world, the kingdom of paradise here on earth. Well, gee whiz. Paradise turned out to be not very nice, especially if you started to question the people around you, man. You'd have some serious problems. There was some treachery going on. There was some murder and death if you didn't conform back in the early days. See, then your founding fathers getting so much shit for trying to have their own nation out there, and the U.S. government sends out federal troops and imposes federal judges over the communities as the ruler thereof, and disposes the local politics because it don't like what's happening there. You know, and what do? You know, I mean, you're either going to fight the U.S. government, and in the middle of the Civil War, you might even have had a chance of beating it, but it would have killed off half your residents, and you know it. So the more discretionary thing to do was make an issue that was visible, that somebody could bitch about, and then, you sell yourself short and join the United States of America. But in so doing, you gain some tremendous advantage. You gain some inside positions in that government. Inside positions. See, it wasn't as secretive then as it is now, but there was plenty of secrecy going on. Ooh-wee. I tell you, it's bad. So these dudes sold you out. They sold that population. That was going to grow there, and they were going to make sure of it, because now the U.S. government would get out of the way, and so would all the other politicos that had been giving them shit. And they could just be Utah, and they could have senators and congressmen and shit, provided they behaved themselves and didn't have more than one wife in public view. Craziness, I know. But because of that, and because of the dogmatic way in which that religion was established, and because of the authoritarian dick-headedness of it, or the authoritarian manner of it, then it became a grand experiment in mind control and thought conditioning that throw all kinds of beams and weaponry into it later on. But at first it was just, what do we say and do? How do we act and behave to get these people to enslave themselves further? and to obey, you see, in a very open sort of way. And the main way they try to do it was with religious fervor. They made you feel like you were some kind of saint because you could endure so much, and that Jesus loved you and would take you home in the great chariot once you got through with all your poor experience here on this side of the reality. You were just here to prove yourself, blah, blah, blah. I mean, the typical stuff, but just given its own flavor and so forth, But see, then you can practice a little hypnosis on the people, because remember, we are programmable because we are meant to be programmed by the heart, but somehow that connection got severed by an invasion in the long ago, Now, I'm talking about this stuff because not too many people remember or know it. So I'm queuing these memories up in you, so you got something to deal with here, some way of seeing past, understanding what really went on here, so you can understand why it's only right that we step into our divinity now, and that we never really stepped out of it. But see, it's like, but that's what we're meant to be programmed by, is by our heart. But because that heart has been severed, then these others attempt to take the place of the heart and substitute their God and their dogma for your stuff, for your own stuff, for your reality, you see. And that old God, that old authoritarian God is just totally worn out. You look over there and see, man, if there's any such thing at all. Totally worn out by the insanity of humanity, you know what I mean? He's been pushing them around for too long, man. They ain't going to obey no authoritarian dickhead. They'll only go along with it so long. Human hearts are unenslaved from the beginning. Human hearts naturally want to wander this earth and be free to experience it in any way that seems pleasing to them. And now we've established a whole world where what seems pleasing to you is not acceptable for the most part in this reality. You have to contain and control it in some way, etc., etc. Conditioning and thought control. That's cultural conditioning, but it's also genetic. It goes so deep that we don't think we can live without one another, yet people live off by themselves all the time. Other people can't leave the city. They've got to be surrounded by the hustle and bustle of all that life. Strange shit, huh? It's all conditioning. But it's given genetically to start with, and then it's modified in this reality by the life that goes on around us, right? But see, we're not hapless victims. We've only subverted ourselves, subdued ourselves, in order to rehabilitate and reverse the, well, not just reverse, but neutralize the polarities in which we've lived, to bring back the loving stance, the presence, and not extend into time which is polarized. Without polarities, time couldn't exist, you understand? And see, that's what you're dealing with when you're dealing with time travel's polarity. And again, I point out to you the illusion of anything like time travel and the illusion of time within itself. See, that's why you can't really have time travel. Even though some people experience it now and do it and modify history because of it, including ourselves. Who are sitting here in the right now, starting to remember and awaken to a reality that we went to sleep to a long time ago, man. You know? And purposely so. So we could experience all this harshness. So we could experience the powerlessness of being thought controlled, of having our very thinking and behavior and activities manipulated by external forces. And it's been going on for thousands and thousands, millions of years. It ain't something new that this three-letter agencies just invented. It's something that's been going on forever. You know what I mean, Jelly Bean? And these three-letter agencies are just starting to catch on. They found out a little bit of the history, the hidden history of this earth, you see. They know we've been in some real enlightened places before, and they know that, you know, a lot of times it's falling apart, so they aim to, you know, kill it off before it does fall apart and control the rest of it. I mean, that was the basic thinking in these families called the Illuminati, and in the persons behind them and the persons. You see, there never is. That's just your visible, secret reality. And there's even a more secret one and a more secret one beyond that. But see, given the fact that we're starting to wake up in our heart and feel and be compassionate and real, well, darlings, you can't deceive us anymore. These deceptions will fall away. There are no secrets. You can't classify top secret and hold to it anymore. It just won't work. I don't care how many rubber stamps you put on it or how many people you want to go gun down to prove that it is secret, you know. It just doesn't work for you anymore, and it ain't, because, I mean, your secrets are seen through the moment you mean. Why do you think there's so much exposure? You might as well have disclosure, because it's already well known. And I know you're trying to orchestrate. I'm talking to governmental types now, the secret type. Well, even the open type. Trying to orchestrate us into a intergalactic war, convince us that the universe is at war with itself everywhere, and we're just part of that, and blah, blah, blah. Babies, if you buy that, well, you're still mind-controlled and conditioned. You haven't woke up yet. But see, if you're living in this truthful space that comes from understanding your life and the joy within it, well, you can't be deceived. You'll see these humanoid creations, if they even get that far with it, which I don't think they would. But if they do, you'll see these humanoid creations coming at you, and you know what that is. You'll see right through it, and you will dissipate the weaponry. There'll be no war. We've already done it. You wouldn't believe some of the predictions made for 2013, 14, 15, let alone 2012. You know, and you wouldn't believe some of the moments they've had planned for us there. They wanted to nuke a city here in the U.S. When I talk about they, let's just talk about the mysterious veiled cabal. Just so it's, I understand it's opinion, but it's still the flow of a real history, you know, a deeper history, a history that goes beyond time into that moment that ever is, and it's just constantly expanding, and loves the colorful nature of its creation too, and that's why it expands, because it's happy with itself. And when you can see yourself in the same way, despite what you've been through, despite what you're going through, when you can allow yourself to see that, yeah, you've been manipulated continually since a kid by external forces. Yes, you have. Everybody. There's no exceptions here. Some are just more asleep to it than others. You know? And then, you know, as you see it, as it's exposed inside of you, because your heart is growing and you're not going to be able to live in lies anymore, which means you can't be conditioned and controlled anymore, because the initial conditioning that makes us programmable is taken its full place again. The presence of the heart is becoming known in your mind, your conscious experience, your conscious expressions. You see, it never really was severed in the first place. It's just a nightmarish dream we allowed ourselves to settle into for a while. For educational purposes, I'm sure. You know, education of the heart, education of the soul. Seasoning through marijuana too, don't you know? Because she'll help you get here to this understanding place. Just use her with a little dignity and grace. Instead of going whole hog and, you know, seeing how stoned you can get. Let's see how high you want to get. How high, how much understanding you want to have. See, that's all getting high is understanding at a level where it's enjoyable. It's letting yourself move into such a space, because most of us don't feel deserving. We feel condemned by some aspect or another, whether we admit it to ourselves or not. It's there just the same. If you got pain, you probably got some kind of shame to go with it. That's how we handle pain sometimes, you know. In fact, it's very basic human programming, which goes back to the first devolution, the first step in devolution, when humans stepped into this scattered form of living and becoming an invaded and occupied humanity, an invaded and occupied reality, not just a planet, not just a people, but the entire reality around us. We handed over the reins, the controls to the little video game we lived in to somebody else, whose heart we totally and completely trusted. but whose attitude and ingratitude we despise. Do you know what I mean? It was one of the most, I mean, on the other side of it is one of the most horrifying experiences a soul could ever create for itself. To live this separate and divided from life as we have here. So much so that we can draw down and kill one another. I mean, that's living about as separate as you can get. As if that person there isn't an element of you and you're not an element of them too. And when they go down, you go down, baby. It's just a different kind of fall. But you just separated yourself inside as much as that person did stepping out of death when you wasted them, right? Well, you didn't waste them. There's no such thing. And, you know, it goes even deeper. The programming, the conditioning, the unreality. You know, so that you think you're so, you know, so responsible for some of the nasty things you've done. Not realizing that if you've done something like that, it's totally thought controlled. It's out of thought control that you do it. People are not naturally heartless like that and can't do that. Your heart, when it's consciously present, couldn't do that because it sees itself in everything and loves itself and all that. You got to think about it. You know, if there's one person, it's in everything. This God is not an authoritarian dickhead, obviously, or life would be based on authoritarian dickheadedness, and I don't see that much of it around, do you? I mean, in the government or in the authoritarian dickheads, yes. But that's mind control, thought conditioning. When you start to step back away from that and you start to understand and realize the feeling of the heart that we share with you here on this Coyote Medicine Show, only on Hazy Radio Network, well, baby, you're starting to catch on to the reality of your true living, the life that we are. And we don't have to just lay around and take this shit anymore. We never really did. And we don't have to fight it either. We just see past the injustice, the lie. We see the equity that exists here. And in so doing, we dissolve away all the dramatic aspects that we've played in. So in a sense, it's the end of everything here. In another sense, it's graduation day. We've got our education under our bets now, babies. We smart ones. And we got to put on that square-toed hat and get our tassels over this way and that way. And show our things in public later on tonight, you know. You understand what I'm saying, though. We're home. We're coming back, and we are at the place of the beginning of our experience. Because it always begins there, whatever it is. And it just grows and expands. We step outside of time in this way. By realizing the expansive nature of ourself in time. And seeing how our heart does indeed create the creation around us. See, it's not something your willful presence can even think of containing or controlling. The willful presence only functions from a point of lack and compensation, and therefore it can't conceive of a real creation. Yet it can live it. You see, it can subdue itself because it proves itself useless. The heartless, willful, cold nature that only wants to over-benefit itself by taking from others is over with. You see, it never worked anyway. I mean, it was just a way to spread suffering and pain. You know, I had an experience the other day. I'm sitting in a restaurant here in this local Crestonia, which ain't a very populated place. You know, maybe 1,000 folks here if you can, you know, round them all up and double them. Not too many folks living here. But I was with a friend, and I was going to this restaurant. I hardly ever go in, but I realized as I was sitting there how, you know, I knew most of the people in there, but you rarely see them anywhere in town except the grocery store, of course, things like that. But you rarely see them anywhere but that restaurant. You know, and these are the people that are living on the fat that they've inherited or developed or whatever. But I mean, you know, and they're sitting there just dining day in and day out on all this fine stuff and watching people around them struggle and starve. And they're just, I mean, they're as untouched by it as I mean, you wouldn't believe it, babies, but they really are. They're untouched by it. They're completely comfortable in their role as the dominating factor here, and they just don't care, right? Well, you know, somewhere inside there is that, of course. And no, not all of them are cold and heartless just because they're eating in this restaurant every day. But the idea that they can sit there and live high like that all the time and not have even a thought of, you know, helping out some in the community around them or finding some way to maneuver people to be helpful to one another, etc., you know, not sharing. You know, in some way, you don't got to go make a big show of it. Probably better if you don't, man, because then people go crazy and think you're an easy touch, of course. But if you're living that kind of life and you're not finding ways to share in this quiet sort of way, well, maybe you ought to think about it, you know, instead of like just being so cavalier. You know, I mean, look at this world around you, but start in your community, wherever you happen to be. If you're one of those that lives on the fat of the land and have done a little better than others, well, and you're not sharing, a lot of you are, because a lot of you have come back to life already, and I love you for it. But there's many here that still, you know, tend to be part of that Illuminati bloodline, let's call it that, just to give it an identifier, but it ain't restricted to that bloodline, it's an attitude, more than it is anything else. But some bloodlines carry it easier than others, and you know, you guys are easily recognizable. You have certain traits that give you away. And you may not even know you are, but a lot of you do. You know, a lot of you think too highly of yourselves, and that's why you do what you do. That's why you're so cold. You know, you think you're above life. Well, darlings, the heart of humanity opening and awakening in the way it is right now with darlings, you ain't going to stay there in that cold place for long, so you might as well start making the moves now because you're feeling them already, you see. I don't care who you are, you know. If you're the local garbage man that, you know, made a big score, you know, when somebody stashed some money somewhere and you just happen to run across it and you got millions stashed in your mattress, I don't care. If you got it and you're not sharing it with yourself or anybody else, you're stupid, man. I mean, you know, those days of punishment and torture are over with. You know what I mean? You don't have to hide. If you got lucky, you got lucky. Bless yourself and get on with it. Don't go putting it in the bank either, but be wise about it. Be smart about it. Don't be stupid. Don't be greedy. Don't be like the world you've seen. Don't be like the world that you despise. Be like the one you dream of all the time. I can dream about you if I can't hold you tonight, man. Just dream this world to be what you want it to be. Recognize that that dream lives in the deepest part of your imaginative self, which is called the heart, which is awakening inside of each and every one listening in today, no matter how you're doing it, whether you're on a cell phone, or you're on a tablet, or a computer, or you got it in some other player or some other way, because baby, we're worldwide. We're all over the place. And it's not that tough to tune in. You can even get little radio sets that work off of the internet radio and get hazy radio there too. I mean, it's just crazy how it goes nowadays. I mean, I wouldn't do that because I understand technology. You don't need a radio. You got a computer. But for some people, that's a little beyond them, so radio makes sense, you know. But anywho, we get out there, babies. And dang, I'm glad to... A little shout out to Argentina this morning, Australia, who else did we have on there? New Zealand, England, Europe. I mean, you know, you guys always, of course, not to mention US and Canada. Don't get too many listeners down in Mexico, or maybe I just don't get hits out of there. I mean, probably got them, but I don't see them showing up. But anyway, babies, we are spreading far and wide, letting this love come back to life here on this Coyote Medicine Show, only on this Hazy Radio Network, don't you know? So you're starting to understand a little more about this stuff, aren't you? Starting to remember a little more about stuff. Starting to understand why the feeling's taken you where it has and why what has happened to you has happened to you. And to see beyond the need for a Nazi empire to control. You know, if you feel yourself out of control, if you feel like you have to be in control of yourself all the time, well, that's what the world around you is reflecting. And you know why you feel like you have to be in control? Because you feel out of control. You know that you're being operated through. yet you can't face that. So what do? You replace that with more control. I see where that comes from. And the world around you becomes a controlling place. And everybody's threatened by it instead of enhanced. I mean, sad. Sad as all get out, but we ain't living it that way no more. I'm just showing you so you can remember and get out of it, See, we don't have to, however we're doing it, all of us have been like those folks in the restaurant, that's got so much and share so little, All of us have been like that in our own way. In our own way, each one of us has a massive amount of wealth in a certain area, in a certain way. And we've been a little greedy about it, a little selfish with it, saying, well, I will only share this if, et cetera, whatever, it takes a lot of different forms. But we've all sold ourselves short, too, for the sake of a few dollars. And some of you have even sold out your friends, for the sake of a few dollars, the sake of a few free days, because the man's saying, oh, you're going to go down bad if you don't rat out your friend, etc. You know what I mean? Sheesh. Well, we've all done these thoughtless and careless behaviors, encouraged onward by a lying, sack of shit reality that lived around us, man, that we couldn't see beyond just yet, but we're sure doing it now. And in so doing, we're recreating. You think this police state's going to last much longer? I don't. Nobody wants to be the police, let alone the state. I mean, think about it, babies. If life is a party, if we're all loosening up, guess what? One day that sentry down there on the corner that yesterday you thought was going to kill you because you didn't have ID with you or something, today is giggling like a baby child and unbuttoning their uniform and dropping it to the ground and starting to dance around. No, there's no weaponry. The weapon dissolved away. The weapon of love is here to stay, and it's not a weapon. It's the end of all the weapons. It's the end of anything that creates weapons. Goodbye, Charlie. Here comes the heart. You starting to catch on? I am too, man. One of these days we'll finally just do it total out, and that'll be it, baby. Maybe today's that day. What do you say?
It's the time of the season for love.